Hey everybody, Deanna Kosaraju, founder of Global Tech Women. Welcome back. For many of you, you never left, which is great. I love seeing you on this session. Welcome to Voices 2014, version 2.0. We are thrilled to have back Linda Bernardi, one of the most amazing women I know, author, technology provocateur, which I love, 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 entrepreneur, former and current CEO, strategist, investor, lecturer, and board member, and all around really cool person to know. She is going to be doing a session called How Women Can and Should Drive Leadership in Tech versus Following Leaders in Tech. How we as women and as women in technology should really be driving the conversation of innovation and being a little bit provocative in our goals, in our visions, in our futures. So Linda has a great experience in this area. She's done a series of firsts, and I hope that she'll add some of her own personal stories to this presentation, which I'm sure she will. Always interesting, always something to learn from. So with that, I'm going to do a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, I see a few visitors here. You need to log in to participate in the chat window on the right-hand side. However, all is not lost. If you don't want to create an account, you can use a Twitter feed, which is hashtag Voices2014. I will be monitoring that feed and will provide questions here for everybody. There's a question box down below. We haven't had a lot of chat feeds, so I think it's just fine. You can post your session or your questions over in the chat window, and we'll just grab them out of there, and Linda will address those as we go. She's really good about that. The URL for this session will be the actual URL for the recording, which will be available 30 minutes after the session concludes. And as always, I know you guys think I'm a broken record now after session 26, but feedback is always welcome. Please, anything, just shoot me an email, deanna@globaltechwomen.com, what you liked, what you think we need to do better, what's missing, who should get involved, what you think we should be doing. Want to hear it all. So please, let it rip. After every session, just send me an email and tell me what you got. I think I will take all that feedback, and we try to make sure we accomplish many more things in the coming years. So with that, I'm going to close and hand it over to Linda, and then I'm going to be putting up her PowerPoint slide. Just so you know, although I think everybody on this session was in the previous session, that when this PowerPoint slide launches, you can drag and drop it anywhere on the screen you wish. You are in complete control of that PowerPoint. So Linda will tell you every once in a while what slide she's on so that you can follow along with her. But you are in control of that document. So you should put it somewhere where you can watch us and watch the PowerPoint at the same time. So Linda, take it away.
Okay, well, thank
We lost
you for
Linda.
having been on. I'm right here. I'm right here. You haven't lost me. We're good? Deanna, give me a signal that we're good to go, and I'll start.
We're good. Go ahead. Linda, can you see me?
Yep, I can see you. I can hear you. Can you see me?
Yes, you're good to go.
Okay,
Okay.
excellent. Well, hello, everyone. As Deanna mentioned, in addition to the stuff that I have done, really what matters to all of us is what I'm doing now. And I'm not quite going to get into the slides for just 1 second, but it's good that it's on the screen ready to go. Really what I do, and I've always done, is push the edge of possibility in terms of innovation. And anytime you introduce disruption, that creates change, that changes things, it creates some level of resistance. But think about things that have happened around you, and has anything happened without disrupting things? So for that, my title is Disruptor. If you go to my website, lindabernardi.com, you'll see that. And it's something that I really started. My tagline about 10 years ago was disrupt, innovate, lead. Because I really don't fundamentally believe that we can innovate or lead if we don't change things. So in this context, disruption is mindful disruption. So what I wanted to talk about is women, this amazing resource that we have in companies, small, medium, large, and startups. Why is it that we don't have women driving and leading? Why is it that we have somewhere around 50% of the workforce in a company women, but if you go and look at the executive positions, we don't see women in that? So this is really more of a dialogue. The presentation will be on the screen, but I encourage you to pop questions, and as you do, I'll incorporate it into what I'm talking about, because this is really more of a brainstorming. And it's really to talk about how we might think differently about driving and leading, as opposed to how perhaps when we take a back seat and become more of a follower. So that's the context. In order to speed up the conversation around disruption and innovation, 2 years ago, I wrote my book, Provoke. You see the cover there. I'd love if you read it, to talk to you about it. But one of the things that I did is I encouraged everybody to be an active participant in the process of disruption and innovation. And anytime I go to speak in a company, do talks around the book, everybody receives an official membership card. This is sort of like your ACLU card, your permission card that disruption is necessary for innovation. I'm really pleased that in the last 2 years, many of the companies that perhaps 4 or 5 years ago had told me that they're very resistant to change have really all come around. And right now, if I said that there's the major chronic problem in companies, particularly medium and large companies, is the necessity and urgency of innovation and disruption. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But think about why. Companies want to be the type of company that they can recruit, right? So if you're one of the top Fortune 100 companies in the United States and you've been around for 100 years, you might have a really hard time recruiting the top talent, because that top talent wants to go to the hottest startup that just got funded. So large companies, medium companies, everybody now has to innovate in order to create a culture, not only to recruit the best and the brightest, but also to create an environment to retain the employees that they do have, and create an environment that the employees want to stay and they excel. So innovation has evolved over the last decade from something that would be nice to do. Today, it's a necessity. That's really what Provoke talks about. As Deanna mentioned, we're all going to go through the slides one at a time. So please go to slide number 2. My background, just to paint the picture for you, right out of grad school, I went to BBN, a think tank. And our job at BBN was to solve really complex problems, problems that didn't have solutions. Anytime we did that, that naturally disrupted everything. So I think the second or third day right out of grad school, and really over the last 2 decades, that's really been the pattern that I've continued. And after doing a number of things, I started, and for 6 years in Cambridge, Mass, started and founded, ran my company, Connectera. And it was the first company to build the infrastructure to replace barcodes with RFID, radio frequency identification. When I started that company and when I went out for fundraising, absolutely the thing that I heard from every single person was, this isn't going to work. The market for it is not available. You have too bold of a vision. It's true. At the time, this was an emerging technology. Pieces didn't exist, but that's really what made it fun and visionary, right? But it required the kind of resilience that I have to say, in 2001 as the first time CEO, was something that was very new to me, because I felt that it was gender independent. Later on, I found out that gender was a factor. Many of the VCs in 2001 and 2002 that I was attempting to raise money from had never funded a woman-founded startup. So naturally, they had some angst, right? Naturally, all of this was very unfamiliar territory for them. After the successful exit of the company, our company was purchased by BA Systems the day that BA was purchased by Oracle. So our products now run as part of Oracle's product line. I really wanted to bring my passion of innovation and disruption into big companies, started Strategia Partners, which is my company. It's a technology strategy firm. And for the last 6 years, and what I do today is embedded in some of the largest, most complex, and I should say oldest companies around the world, talking about how we're going to disrupt and innovate. So that's a little bit about my background. The point I want to make is that The stuff that I'm going to talk to you about is the stuff that I do today. In addition to running my company, I fund and I'm very involved with startups around the world, anywhere from India to China to South America, as well as throughout the US. And I focus on areas of analytics, cloud, some aspects of social, but really areas that we can push the envelope and change things. But my passion equally is to bring these startups into large enterprises. So that's a little bit about me. And if you would follow me to slide number 3, first of all, I want to make you comfortable with disruption. Disruption is great, right? However, the word disruption can have negative connotations. And if you're trying to change things around in your company, you might have somebody telling you, hey, Deanna, you're being too disruptive. That has a negative connotation. However, any company that's successful today is only successful because it chose to disrupt the normal paradigm. And that's something that I want you, all of you, to be very comfortable. And we're going to talk about some of the ways to get there so that we can drive as opposed to follow the leaders. We can become the leaders. So if you would go with me to slide number 5, what does it mean to drive? What does it mean to lead? First of all, there's a very high chance of a risk of failure. It's a risky thing to do. When you drive things, when you want to take your company, whether it's your small group, if we have CEOs of companies on the call, or anyone that's viewing this, no matter when and what you're doing, if you decide to push, to drive, there is risk. There is possibility of failure. However, respect from people around you happens when you have a vision, when you have the appetite and the ability to push it forward. The challenge is to do it collaboratively, but not paralyzed by consensus. Females typically tend to want to make decisions when it's extremely consensus based, and females like to make decisions when everybody likes the decision. This isn't kindergarten. This isn't about being liked. This is about having a passion, a drive. Yes, it is imperative to work closely with teams, utilize the best, aspect and potential of everybody. But at some point, you're going to have to make the decision and push things forward and be comfortable that that failure is actually the first step towards the success of the next thing your company is going to do. However, you will hear things, people will say, you're being too disruptive. You're going to fail. And all of those come to you as negative, but in fact, it's some of the best elements of entrepreneurship. When you lead, not everybody's agreeing with you. And one of the things that's happening, you're pushing people outside of their comfort zone. And the reason people react as they do is because you have pushed them out of their comfort zone. If you go to a product line manager who has a very successful product that's been going successfully for 10 years, and you tell them, unless we change, we're going to die, that person is going to resist because you just pushed them out of their comfort zone. Their comfort zone is running a business they know how to run. So typically, the most reactive people are those that are uncomfortable changing anything in what they're trying to do. And we're going to talk about ways that you can take control changing things. I'd like to encourage you to think about influence, not just how you act, but whether you influence people around you. And influence is when you're so viral that people want to follow you. I find, whether it's startups or big companies or any size, the people that have the most influence, and by the way, this is not a title influence, it's really the inherent aspect, are the people that have the vision, they're bold, everybody knows that they will go for it, and that garners respect by everybody. Deanna among us, if I can use her as an example, she came out with a vision. She said, I have a passion to connect women, technology women around the world. I want to create this global community. I want to start a dialogue globally. I don't want to be bound by the restrictions that we had previously. I don't want to have physical conferences that only a few can come. I want to have environments that everybody can be a part of. That garners respect. She influences people to want to follow her. So just having an agenda is not enough. You have to be mindful, are people following you? And if you gain respect, that opens up a lot of opportunities. So yes, disruption is necessary. All of these things, when you go about to do them, it's going to cause resistances, right? But to be a successful leader, you can't react to the resistances, nor can you ignore the resistances, right? As women, most often, and I say this with the best intention, and it varies globally from culture to culture, um, women tend to be extremely uh, reactive and take things very personally. So if you get into a situation where you are pushing an idea and somebody, perhaps a male, gets up in the meeting and says, Linda, I absolutely disagree with you, and react, the woman more than often will retreat, will sit down, will take it personally, and suddenly it becomes a personal situation. So we're going to talk about the things that we need to do in order to evolve, because the reason we don't have more women in leadership and driving innovation is not because we don't have highly talented women or because we don't have women who can get the job done. To the contrary, we do. But we don't have the necessary interaction mechanisms and tools in order to effectively work. So if we go into slide number 6 right now, I'm going to talk about 4 or 5 things that I would like to encourage you to be mindful of. One, to recognize that people, and I strongly recommend reading The Power of Habit, but in general, people function in what are called habit loops. Everybody around you, ourselves included, we tend to do things that we know how to do very well and what the results are going to be. So we know the task, we get the routine done, the tasks get accomplished, you get a pat on your shoulder, you feel great, and you do the same thing over and over and over. And if that task is something like get up, get in your car, driving, yeah, I don't want to disrupt my driving model every day. That's a normal thing. But when it comes to innovation, that's necessary. And if you follow me to slide 7, how do we innovate if this loop is so stringent? And on slide 8, we talk about we need to change those standard cues into what if, and we need to start taking risks, right? So effectively, if you go to slide 9, what we need to do is to help others break that habit loop, which, by the way, creates resistance. So when you go to somebody with an idea, the reason they are reacting as they do is because you have right there broken their habit loop. And yes, Deanna is reminding us that The Power of Habit is one of the book club. Yes, absolutely. And I encourage you to think about that because it happens to be one of the key ways that people are reacting. And the reason that I want you to think in that respect, and Duhigg talks a little bit about it, but I've really taken it into the corporate realm, is because you'll realize that it's not about you, it's about somebody else becoming uncomfortable. And when you recognize that, you'll see that it's not you. So I can't take something personally that's not about me. It's somebody else feeling that the bubble is bursting. So it's this is going on around you constantly, and I want you to be aware of it. And on slide number 10, I suggest that we need to break the habit loops. We need to create these what if models, experiment, prototype, fail, constantly disrupt in order to be able to innovate. And that's the work that I do in the big companies that I work with, right? Or startups. It's about changing this model. So lesson number 1, think about the habit loops of the people around you. Think about whether that's causing some level of their reaction. If you go to slide number 11, the other thing I want you to think about is the mindset of the people around you. If somebody has a fixed mindset, by the way, typically those people also have huge habit loops of how they operate. These individuals, they really don't want to change anything, right? Versus somebody that has a growth mindset. For all of us, think about people around you with the growth mindset. These are the people that you could comfortably sit with and say, hey, what if we did something? Or hey, what if we change something around? The individual with a growth mindset tends to be more risk prone as opposed to risk averse, more comfortable with failure, needs less assurances. But probably the most biggest element for me that matters in the growth mindset is that individual with a growth mindset are constantly learning. So I suggest that you find people around you that are willing to learn, because that's what's going to push you to learn. For me, every day that I get up, it's about learning 10, 20 things that I didn't know. In tech, it's happening all the time. If I'm in a habit loop and I'm doing the same thing, if I have a fixed, if I have a non-growth mindset, chances are I'm really not going to learn. So think about those people around them. You can find them, right? Think about them. These people tend to not learn a lot. They don't like new things. They're not evolving. So recommendation number 2 is try to change the circle of the people that you're around. And in slide number 12, I provide some additional detail that you can think about. My personal recommendation is, I'm sure all of you do, have a growth mindset, because let's face it, it's a Saturday. You are here, we're collaborating together. So it's so clear to me that everyone does. But more importantly than us having it, try to surround yourself with people that have it as well. Item number 3, in how do we sort of drive innovation? In my book, Provoke, we talk about 5 stages of resistance. And I want to share this with you because the more aware you become, you'll realize that a lot of the resistances that you're facing is not because of you, but possibly it's the reaction of the person that you're dealing with. So if you're a startup and you take your idea to a bunch of VCs and you're getting turned down, instead of taking 20 to 30 rejections personally, you have to sort of go back and understand the core. Sometimes it's because that venture capitalist has never invested in that area of business. Sometimes it's because they really don't know that area of business. Oftentimes it's a lot of other things other than they don't like you. So as women leaders, for us to drive business, we have to stop this personalization. We have to look at the situation and arm ourselves with tools and methods to be able to handle this far better than we're handling it today. Now, the 5 stages of resistance is gender independent. This is not about women. It's about anybody who has an idea and their idea is resisted. It's about why disruption slows down in companies, because there's so much resistance to change. So think about your favorite tech companies. Ask yourself why, if a tech company has 200,000 employees, it's only introduced 2 products in the last 2 years. That's not because the people in the company aren't smart. It's not because they don't have ideas. It's because there's so many resistances stopping them. And the more we learn and become aware of the causes of the resistance and know how to deal with it, we can succeed. So I'd like to walk you through the 5 stages fairly quickly here. And again, feel free to chime in. I'll incorporate your questions. But before I do, actually, no, let's just stop right here. I'm on slide 13. Let me see if anybody has some questions that you want us to talk about. Anything up until this point that you want me to discuss, clarify, or a thought or a personal experience that you want to share with someone. Okay, so the first stage of resistance is anger and denial. The first time that you take an idea to someone who's very focused in having everybody be focused in what they're trying to do, the first reaction is that of anger and denial. Anger sometimes exudes itself fairly strongly. Denial is, we don't need to change. So if I was BlackBerry 4 years ago and tons of BlackBerry employees went to the executives and said, hey, the paradigm of phones are changing. Customers have different expectations. We need to change. The very first reaction would have been to protect the turf, to protect what there was. I think the story of BlackBerry, all of us are aware of it. We know where that leads, right? So think about why Kodak today isn't the company that owns the photo platform. Think about why Pinterest and Instagram emerged with minimal number of people, with tens of thousands of less patents, and suddenly they own the photo platform universe. Why didn't Kodak think ahead? And a lot of that, it's not because there aren't smart people in the company. I can tell you with assurance, it's because there's so much resistance to change because we're protecting revenue. And when you read Provoke, if you want more detail, there's some clear examples that we've shared there. So when you see this anger and denial, go back to the toolkit that you just learned. Chances are that person operates more in a habit environment, right? They've been doing the same thing for many, many years. They're not comfortable with change. Also, chances are that the person that has anger and denial is also a person that has a fixed mindset, not a growth mindset. What do? If you understand this ahead of time, their reactions aren't going to get you to retreat. Rather, you're going to be armed. So when you get that reaction, what you can respond with is let's spend a little bit of time and talk about what our competitors are doing. So be aware and ready to discuss that. Or talk about the market and how the market expectation is evolving. So it's important when you see this reaction not to personalize it, rather to be prepared that this is going to come up. And whether it's in a boardroom where you might be one of many people that is seeing that reaction, or if it's in a one-on-one meeting, or you're sitting with your team, or you're a co-founder in a startup and you want to change things, it happens everywhere. It's about understanding the people around you, right? So that's step number 1. I'm on slide number 15. And the second stage of resistance is rejection. Typically, after there is anger, denial, that reaction, then the easiest next thing to do is to reject it, right? You might get a comment like, absolutely not. We're not going to do this. This is the craziest thing we've ever heard about. Or it might even get more intimate, like, I can't believe how you're coming forward with an idea like this. Or if you've actually punctured somebody's bubble of self-importance, right? They will react even more personally and stop talking to you in the middle of the presentation. Totally. That's a sign of rejection. So again, you as the great army ready to go in, you're ready. You know what the reactions are. You're very smart. Be prepared. In fact, if you're prepared, you might even start with something like, hey, John, I'm going to say something that I think is going to make you very uncomfortable. But, I really thought about this, and this is the reason that we need to change. I want to present it to you. Then I want to hear your thoughts. Then I want us to work together on it. So interject when you feel that rejection is going to come up. Don't be the victim. And when rejection happens, act victimized, right? Most women in situations when I sit in board meetings, wherever I am, whenever women executives are trying to push their idea and generally they're outnumbered or uncomfortable with the confrontation, oftentimes it leads with silence. They leave the room, and then it's sort of unclear as to when, if at all, that there's going to be another meeting. So this isn't personal, right? That's step number 2. The third stage of resistance, and now I'm on slide number 16, is recognition. So the first 2 steps, kind of hard, painful, but if you're persistent, right? If you're comfortable that you're going to push things forward, eventually, now let me qualify. There has to be merit in the change you want to introduce. So if you're driving, there are times that, in fact, just because I'm passionate about something, it's not the right thing to do. And typically what I personally do, I have mentors and advisors in everything that I do. I will vet it by them. So it's not just my feeling, I'm passionate about this, therefore it should happen. But once it's clear and it makes sense and there's consensus among others that we should do this, then you're persistent. And be comfortable as you move through stage 1, anger and denial, to stage 2, rejection. You're going to be called things like aggressive, pushy, bossy, disruptive, difficult to work with, just as a few. And I would encourage you that you cherish these. This is some of the greatest comments that you're going to hear. Instead of translating it into the most negative personal attribute that you've just heard, I encourage you to realize that that's because the person speaking with you recognizes you're unstoppable. If you are unstoppable and you're rational and passionate, you are going to move things forward. That's going to get you through stage number 3, which is recognition, which in a big company may seem like something like, hey, Deanna, your idea has merit. Why don't we run a prototype and see how it turns out? And you can then say, great, let's run it for 3 months, see how it works. I want to push it to the next level. So recognition happens. Now in big companies, sometimes recognition happens out of duress, right? Over the last 5 years, post Apple's successful pad launch, we've seen everybody and their brother introduce a tablet. Okay, we don't need that many tablets, right? Seriously. So just because I'm going to have a Me Too strategy, this is not a strategy. This is not true recognition. True recognition is to be able to be willing to change things. And one of the greatest examples recently that really inspired me was at Autodesk. For all of you, as you know, Autodesk is a hugely compute intensive desktop and more of a connected server environment for extremely complex and high res architectural drawings, schemas, etc. And one of the most fantastic things that Autodesk did is decided to experiment to move to the cloud. There were many unknowns. Moving Autodesk software to the cloud is extremely risky. But today, as a result of having done that, Autodesk has a huge offering on the cloud. Compare it to some of the other companies, maybe a very notable company where I live in Seattle, who has resisted the migration to cloud for so long in order to protect the revenue stream. So these are the things that it's important for this recognition to not just be a Me Too strategy, but rather a meaningful strategy. And as we move together to slide number 17, if we're successful, and I encourage all of you not to give up and be persistent, we move into the inspiration stage. There is nothing that inspires people around you more than when someone who believes in something has moved through these stages and has actually is getting things done. Yes, it's risky. Yes, it's unknown. And I think I'm going to bring Deanna's example one more time. We're here because she dealt with all the unknown, right? And she chose to do something that wasn't done. As a result, has opened up this global dialogue about how to create stronger women leaders. So inspiration is critical. And I might say, by the way, if you're surrounded by people who don't inspire you, who choke you and suffocate you, whether you're in a startup, you're a founder with the wrong co-founders, whether you're in mid-level at a big company, at a high level in a small company, it doesn't matter. Surround yourself by people that inspire you and take the opportunity or the responsibility of inspiring others very seriously. That is really, really important as something to think about. And finally, if all of it is done, step 5 is acceptance and action. And that's when a company says, you know what, we are migrating to the cloud, or we're changing our entire analytics strategy, or we're changing our social component, or we're manufacturing our products differently, right? But think about the effort that has to go through. What we need in companies, irrespective of the size of the company, are passionate people who are unstoppable in pushing things forward. When enough women become these unstoppable forces, then we will not have the dialogue we're having today. We won't be talking about how to make more women be leaders, how to help them drive. We're going to look and say, look at what women have done. And that's really the possibility. If you go to slide number 19, but let me first see if we've gotten, let's see. Thank you, all the comments coming in. It's fantastic. And I encourage you to think about these examples and how they work. And actually, as of about a month ago, in the next edition of Provoke, I'm going to change and add a 6th stage of resistance. And that is something, since I've been out for 2 years talking about the 5 stages, that I'm now really passionate about, and that is the avoidance. There are people that simply don't respond to you, right? They just don't respond. You can't get them to respond. And it's not that they're angry or they're in denial. It's not that they're rejecting you. They're simply not, they're just choosing not to interact with you. And you know what? It's very frustrating at any level when you work with these people, because what they're trying to do is to say that they're choosing not to interact with you. And trust me, it happens at the highest levels of the most significant companies, right? And what one has to do is to think about how to change it. And I think I'm coming to the conclusion, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, that there are times to just walk away from these people. There are people that are there that aren't really going to help you in doing what you need to do. The reason that you're key to your company to be a driver is because you're going to make a substantial change in and improve your company. So the question is whether these people that are around you are people that you want to even spend time with at any level. So the jury's out. Let me know. Deanna agrees with me. I'd love to hear from the rest of you. And so these are the stages. So to recap, what we've talked about is number one, understand that people resist because they have these habits that you're breaking. Fundamentally, you are moving people way out of their comfort zone. You want to see a reaction? Look at somebody who you've just disrupted their comfort zone. They will be very, very uncomfortable. And the way they will react is to try to make you uncomfortable so you will retreat and go away. So we've talked about the habits, getting people out of their comfort zone, understanding and surrounding ourselves with people that have the growth mindset, understanding the stages of resistance and learning how to move people through them, right? And any of you who are in companies that want me to come and talk to you, I would love to. I will tell you, we've seen the most amazing change because when I go and work with companies, we're not just talking to rank and file. We're talking to CEOs in how they need to change their sort of resistances. And finally, I'd like to bring you to slide number 21. And here, I wanted to put the pieces together and say, okay, to succeed, we break the habit loop. We need to understand and change mindsets. We need to move people through stages of resistance. Now I want you to stop because we ourselves have resistances. I would love to say that I'm void of them or say you're void of them. But sometimes the reason that we're not driving is because we ourselves are stuck somewhere in the resistance loop. I've had people tell me, I never knew I was stuck in rejection. I never knew how I was behaving was rejecting other people. So not only are we moving others through these stages of resistance, I encourage ourselves to be truthful and say, we need to move ourselves. Remember, it's not always about other people. Human dynamics are successful, not just because everybody around us has to change. The question is, how do we have to change? So it's about the stages of resistance for everybody. And for all the women on this call or in general who are going to look at this presentation, it's not personal. When you present your idea and your idea gets shot down, they don't hate you. There's an entire chapter in my book talking about the issue and what the issue is, because honestly, it's number 5. I'm on slide number 21, and it's item number 5. It's to find your confidence zone, to find that zone that you're so confident, because when you're confident, you can address and manage risk and failure. So number 1, you need to find your confidence zone, and then you need to drive your confidence with enthusiasm and be willing to change people's mindset. Yes, it is hard work. If you have a great idea and you're an entrepreneur and you're expecting to take the idea and immediately 50% of the funders are going to fund your company, never going to happen. If you're an innovator with an idea to change the world about something, your idea is going to get shot down before it gets accepted. By the way, it's one of the greatest things. When you get absolutely strong resistance from somebody, for me, in the startups that I'm involved in, because at this time, there are 4 startups that I'm starting myself. When I get that kind of a resistance, it's like fuel and energy. It's unstoppable, right? But you have to have the confidence. You also have to know what you don't know and be willing to learn the things you don't know. You need to find the people that fill those voids that you don't have, right? This is not a personal mission, but it's a mission that your energy can drive it to be forward. I want you to be intentionally influential. However, I really encourage you, maybe when these sessions are done, maybe tomorrow, if you're walking, taking a hike, or just sleeping, think about influence. What's the definition of that word? Think about the people that have had an impact on you. How have they led that has made you want to follow them when they absolutely have to make no effort to make that happen? I want you to be proud to be a leader. Be proud about who you are. Don't judge yourself based on the titles that people give you. Don't set your self-respect based on the words or accolades of people at a moment of time who are around you. A lot of times, How they react towards you is a manifestation of themselves and the issues that they're dealing with. A lot of times doesn't have to do with you. So if they avoid you, if they don't want to talk to you, there are a lot of other reasons. They might phrase it as, X is really difficult to work with. I just don't like working with her. But the truth is that you're probably doing something right. So be proud of who you are. Be proud to be a driver. As women, there would be a lot more of us driving and leading companies if we didn't want constant approval and acceptance of all of our actions. So be willing to take action, not necessarily because somebody's going to say, good job, right? And be willing to have some bruises on the way. Bruises are great. Find band-aids. Put the band-aids on and let time move it forward. Inspire yourself and others. Your passion is great. And remember, when you deal with these resistances, when you go from following to leading, it's not about you. Sometimes it's not at all about you. So learning how to not take it personally really, really helps. So these are just some of the thoughts that I wanted to share with you. And on slide number 22, I encourage you, wherever you're at, start talking to your colleagues, to your peers about change, right? As Deanna mentioned early on, when she introduced me, I spend about 70% of my time out of the US. And for our colleagues that might be on this call that are from India, Africa, China, Japan, South America, those are places that I spend a lot of my time. And culturally, there are a lot of barriers, generally speaking, from a title perspective. When you add the female element to it, it even makes it more complex. I'm more than happy, in fact, probably Deanna and I would be more than happy to work with you in solving these things. But I fully recognize that in certain cultures, it feels almost impossible to be a woman and to be a leader because the culture does not embrace that because there are too many difficulties. And when I say culture, I don't mean just the company. I mean the family culture, right? The family culture in certain of our close countries where it's not necessarily the thing to do for you to aspire to go and run a big company because you should be at home taking care of your children. So our friends might not judge us the right way. Our parents might not approve of us. So there's so many things when it comes to being a woman and driving and leading that are obstacles that we need to be mindful of that. But if you just give yourself the permission to stop disrupting, to start changing, to create a culture around yourself, initially it might be small and the sphere will grow. But if you just allow yourself to do that, that's really where change starts happening. On slide number 23, I've put in the ecosystem of disruption. I encourage you to realize that everything around you is changing, right? Everything. In terms of where technology is being created, how technology is being consumed. Today, if you're smart, if you have the great idea, literally it costs nothing to build it, have it available for the world to consume it. And yes, maybe after 5 years and 52 employees, you get purchased for $19 billion when the rest of the world hadn't heard about you. Anything is possible. But in order for anything to be possible, you have to first give yourself the permission. So as women, the most important thing is to give yourself the permission to drive, to lead, and let the rest follow. So with that, I think the only question left is what I stated in slide number 25. The question isn't if the world is ready, it's about whether you're ready. And with that, I thank all of you, and I'd like to open up the floor for any questions you might have, any comments or other. Absolutely. Let me also open it up if there's any area that I've talked to about during this presentation, if there's anything that you want us to expand upon, or if you disagree. Absolutely. Hey, I'd like to learn from you. So, right, we're all with a growth mindset. So please let me know. Otherwise, I'd like to invite Deanna. We're almost at the end of the hour. And thank you all. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Rose. Thank you, everybody, for being there. And I look forward to, through Global Tech Women and Other, connecting with all of you.
Usual, Linda, an awesome talk. I know we were chatting over here in the chat box about some of the ideas and concepts that you've brought forward in this talk, and I think you've given us a lot to think about and a lot to assess, both in our personal and professional lives, how we can configure our lives to be more provocative, more innovative, and thinking about, you know, what our passions truly are and how we can set ourselves up so that we are able to exceed our visions for the future, because that's what being here is all about, is having that vision and watching it all come into reality. So I look forward to hearing about all of your visions as we go through Voices and as we continue to pursue our visions at Global Tech Women over the coming year. I think Sarabi has a question for you. Do you see it there,
Sure.
Linda?
I'm sorry, which one? Which question?
Here, I'll put it up for you. You're gonna
Okay.
have to scroll
Yeah.
through it because it's a little long. There's a little more button there.
Yep.
Okay.
The question is, in the pursuit of innovation, do we need to have a fixed mindset about other growth mindset, for instance? You know, this is, Sarabi, a very interesting question, right? Within each component of a growth mindset, there are probably pieces that are fixed, right? Particularly when it comes to technology or product or other things. But it's one that I got to have to go back and think about. But most likely, the overall mindset is a growth mindset. It's one that's willing to change, to learn, because it has to do with experimentation. And if we're experimenting, we don't know what the outcome is. So if I have an absolutely fixed mindset, even for subcomponents, the danger is I can't really experiment and evolve. But so my answer, my immediate answer would be that I would say it's probably a growth mindset, but the drive in it is that there's a clear drive and passion, right? That's the way I would answer it. I think Jean has another question. Can you elaborate on point 7, intentionally influence? By that I mean, first of all, recognize what influence is. Influence truly is not title. It's not position. Yes, that might carry some weight in terms of what you can force people to do, but influence is what people want to do. Deliberate is an intentional, is be mindful of that and try to achieve that influence level. Women shy away from that. Part of it, they don't want to be viewed as being too aggressive. Women have a really hard time promoting themselves. They have weaker external perspectives. For whatever reason, Jean can't hear the response.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jean. What you can do is you can view the recording of the session to hear Linda's response. You can just scroll through to the end of it and hear like the last couple minutes of it, and you'll be able to get her response. I don't know why we've lost you. I'm sorry about that.
So basically, it's intentional because, ladies, you want to drive, it is intentional. It's not accidental. It's influence because it's how we need to get people around us to want to collaborate with us. Ah, Jean can hear us. There you go, Jean. Excellent. So, but very good question. Any other questions that you want to throw in? Any other experiences that you want to share with your colleagues on the call? I think this might be a wrap, Deanna.
I think so. I think their wheels are spinning. I can feel it through the internet connection, through my computer, up into my headphones. I can hear people thinking about what they've just heard and processing it in their own lives. So that's terrific.
And before we wrap up, let me just add one more thing, because this might be what some of you are thinking, which is, you know, yes, these are words, right? How do I leave from this point and on Monday take all the things that I'm hearing in these great sessions and incorporate it. And it's a gradual process. I encourage you to encourage your companies to connect with Vienna, to have this platform be a platform of communication. Change doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen on a weekend. Change is a process that we need to continually encounter. We need to have mentors. We need to have people to talk about these things. So please don't leave thinking, well, okay, so this is what I'm supposed to go do. You're going to get frustrated. But if you just start allowing yourself to incorporate these changes, give yourself permission, you'll begin to see people reacting to you differently. But it's one step at a time. And with that, I thank all of you. You are all very great.
Like Zig Ziglar says, motivation and understanding and change is not something that happens overnight. You can't expect to be in one session and expect things to start changing. It's a process. And just like showering, it's something that you have to do every day. It doesn't mean that it doesn't work.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. Exactly.
it's really
Exactly.
important that you keep
Wonderful.
enforcing it and creating those new habits, which is back to the power of habit. You're rewiring your own habits to build that influence. And what I do in what I've done in the past is, I find something that the people around me or the company I'm in is not capable of seeing. I see it, but they don't see it. And what I do is I just, take my little plastic spoon and I just keep pushing on that boulder, right? And I find ways to make that a reality. And it becomes contagious when people see that you're actually able to make a movement like that and influence without having the title or without having, the everybody on board with it, they'll follow you. And it's amazing how much momentum you can create just by having that kind of vision. People are looking for vision and they're looking for
Yes.
people who have it. And again, it's not something that you create overnight, but it is a gradual thing. But boy, once that boulder starts rolling, there's no stopping it. There's absolutely no stopping it.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, and
um,
I think the word, Deanna, contagious is very important, whether we call it viral or contagious. And I think, you have now created a platform to allow this to happen. We just need to make sure the dialogue continues.
absolutely. And we're all
But thank you,
involved.
everyone.
Yes, thank you. And
Absolutely.
and with what we were just saying, I want you guys to be part of the next session because Charlotte is going to be talking about gigabit technology. This is a brand new technology that's coming out. There's very few women in this space, but the potential is huge. In places like India and in other places in the world, the opportunities are just completely boundless. So, take the next 30 to 45 minutes and listen to what she has to say. I think you'll find the session completely fascinating. I was mesmerized hearing about what they're working on, and they're really trying to appeal to women who are thinking about being entrepreneurs or trying to expand their own influence by leveraging this technology. And I know Linda knows all about this space. Uh, you should join
Yes,
us
and
too,
I
Linda.
apologize. Well, had I not been going to the events, engagement, wedding, I would have been there. But if I'm not, Charlotte, I will catch up. I'm putting aside a good block of time to go through and watch all the stuff I've missed.
Great. Well, and I think the two of you getting together, I think you'll be a force to be reckoned with. So I'm waiting for that moment to happen, and it's going to be exciting. So I hope to see you all in the next session. And if I don't see you, have a great rest of the day, evening, morning. And again, send me feedback. And I hope to see you in the last few sessions of Voices. This has just been an amazing couple of days. Thrilled to have you here. So take care, everybody. And Linda, have a great time this
Wonderful.
afternoon.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye.